Picture this. You walk into a used car yard, the salesman is smiling, the Ute looks clean, the paint is shining, and the price feels just right. You take it for a short test drive. Everything seems fine, you sign the paperwork, and you drive it home feeling like you just got the deal of the century. Then, 3 weeks later, your mechanic lifts it up on the hoist and goes quiet for a second, and that silence is the most expensive silence you will ever hear in your life. That moment right there is exactly why we made this video. Because we went out and physically inspected 8 used Utes across Australia, and what we found in 3 of them was the same hidden problem, and none of those sellers mentioned a single word about it. So if you are thinking about buying a used Ute anytime soon, do not skip this video. What we are about to share could save you thousands of dollars and a whole lot of heartbreak. Welcome back to the Drive Intel. If you are new here, this channel is all about helping everyday Australians make smarter decisions when it comes to buying, owning, and understanding vehicles. We do not sugarcoat things, we do not take money from dealerships, and we always tell you exactly what we find, even when it is uncomfortable. So if that sounds like the kind of content you want in your life, hit that like button right now and make sure you're subscribed so you never miss a video like this one. We put a lot of time and research into everything we publish, and your support genuinely helps us keep doing this. Now let us get into it. Over the past several weeks, we set out on a mission. We wanted to inspect 8 used Utes that were currently listed for sale, some from private sellers, some from small dealerships, and a couple from larger used car yards. The Utes ranged in age from 2015 to 2021, and the prices ranged from around $18,000 all the way up to just over $42,000. We are talking about some of the most popular Ute models in Australia right now, the kind of vehicles that sit on everyone's shortlist when they are looking for something tough, reliable, and practical. We had a qualified mechanic with us for every single inspection, and we took detailed notes on everything we found. No guessing, no assumptions, just honest, hands-on inspection results. Before we get into the specific problems we found, let us talk about why used UTs in Australia are such a risky purchase right now. The used car market has been through a lot over the last few years. Supply chain issues pushed new car prices sky high, which then pushed used car prices up with them. A lot of buyers who could not afford new started flooding the used market. And that demand gave sellers, both private and commercial, a lot of power. When sellers have power, they become less motivated to disclose problems, because they know someone else will come along and buy it anyway. That environment created the perfect conditions for hidden problems to slip through, and unfortunately, buyers are still paying the price for it. We saw that play out firsthand during our inspections, and by the end of this video, you will know exactly what to look for, so you are not the next person caught out. Let us start with the first 3 Utes we inspected, because these were actually the ones that looked the best on the surface. The first one was a 2018 model with just over 90,000 kilometers on the clock. The ad said it had been regularly serviced, came with a full logbook history, and had never been used off-road. It looked fantastic. Clean interior, no visible panel damage, good tires. But when our mechanic got underneath it, the first thing he noticed was the undercarriage. There was a level of rust and corrosion on the chassis rails that you simply would not expect from a vehicle that had supposedly never been off-road or near saltwater. That kind of corrosion pattern is consistent with a vehicle that has been regularly driven on coastal roads, flooded areas, or exposed to mud and water for extended periods. It was not structurally dangerous yet, but left untreated, you are looking at a serious repair bill within the next year or two. The second Ute we looked at was a 2019 model from a small dealership. The salesperson was friendly, the presentation was polished, and the car had been freshly detailed. You know that smell, the one that tells you someone wanted you to see this car in its best possible light. The kilometers were reasonable, the service history was partial but present, and the asking price was on the higher end of what we would expect. Here is where things got interesting. When we checked the engine bay, our mechanic noticed something that most people would walk right past. The coolant reservoir had a very faint brown discoloration inside it, and there were tiny traces of what looked like an oily residue around the radiator cap. For anyone who knows engines, that combination can be a warning sign of a head gasket issue or early coolant contamination. It is one of those things that an untrained eye would never catch, but it can mean the difference between a solid vehicle and an engine rebuild waiting to happen. The third Ute in that early group was a 2020 model with low kilometers, only around 62,000, and it was priced quite aggressively. The seller was a private individual, and they were motivated to sell quickly. Now, whenever a seller is in a hurry and the price is lower than expected, that is not always a red flag on its own, but it does mean you need to look harder. And when we did look harder on this one, we found that the rear differential had signs of a slow oil leak, and the rear leaf springs were showing stress marks that suggested the Ute had been used to carry heavy loads, consistently and probably beyond its rated capacity. The seller had described it as a light work vehicle, Lightwork does not stress leaf springs like that. That kind of wear tells a story. The story the vehicle was telling was very different from the one the seller was sharing. Now here's where we get to the hidden problem that connected 3 of these 8 Utes. And honestly, when we started seeing it repeat itself, we had to stop and talk about it properly. The problem is frame and chassis rust combined with deceptive surface repairs. What does that mean exactly? It means that someone, whether a seller, a dealer prep team, or a previous owner, has gone in and used undercoating spray, black paint, or some kind of rust converter product to make the underside of the vehicle look cleaner and more solid than it actually is. On the surface, it looks like the underbody is in great condition. The color is uniform, it looks coated and protected. But when a mechanic gets in there and starts probing around with a pick or a screwdriver in the right spots, the metal underneath is soft, flaky, or compromised. This kind of cosmetic fix is not a repair. It is a cover-up, and it is incredibly common on Utes that have had a working life in agriculture, construction, mining adjacent roles, or coastal areas. 3 of the 8 Utes we inspected had this exact issue. 3 out of 8. That is not a small number. That is 37.5% of the vehicles we looked at, showing signs of deliberate, or at least negligent cosmetic masking of an underlying structural problem. And the scary part is that if we had done what most buyers do, which is walk around the outside, sit inside, take it for a drive, and trust what the seller says, we would have missed it on every single one. None of those issues are visible from a standing inspection. You need to get underneath. You need to know what you're looking for. And ideally, you need someone qualified standing next to you who has seen this before. Let us talk about the other 5 Utes we inspected, because it was not all bad news. The 4th Ute we looked at was a 2017 model with higher kilometers, around 130,000, but it had a genuine full service history from an authorized dealer, and the mechanical condition was surprisingly honest. Yes, it had wear consistent with its age and kilometers, but everything was transparent and consistent. The undercarriage showed normal surface oxidation for its age, but nothing that had been treated or painted over. This is actually what genuine wear looks like on an older Ute. No cover-ups, no surprises. That vehicle, despite being older and higher in kilometers, was actually one of the more trustworthy inspections of the day. The 5th Ute was a 2021 model, nearly new, and asking price reflected that. This one came from a larger dealership with a certified pre-owned program. Our mechanic still got underneath it and still went through every check, but this one largely held up well. There were minor signs of light off-road use, some surface marks on the bash plate, slight dust compaction in the undercarriage, but nothing hidden, nothing masked, and the mechanical systems all checked out cleanly. If you are someone who wants peace of mind and has the budget, a certified pre-owned from a reputable brand dealer is still generally a safer starting point, though it is not foolproof, and we will come back to that. The 6th, 7th, and 8th Utes all had their own individual quirks. One had a worn clutch that had maybe 15 to 20,000 kilometers left in it before it would need replacing. Not a disaster, but definitely a negotiating point. Another had a suspension knock on the front passenger side that the seller claimed was just a loose bolt, but turned out to be a worn lower ball joint. A safety issue, not just a comfort issue. And the last one had an aftermarket tow bar fitted that had been installed without the proper reinforcement plates, which means anyone using it to tow anything significant was doing so unsafely and potentially outside of what insurance would cover in the event of an accident. So what does all of this tell us? It tells us that the used Ute market in Australia right now requires you to be more switched on than ever before. The days of shaking hands on a Ute because it looks good and drives okay are gone. The financial stakes are too high, the problems are too hidden, and the sellers, whether intentionally or not, are often not giving you the full picture. At The Drive Intel, we believe that every buyer deserves to walk into a purchase with real information, not just a polished exterior and a smooth sales pitch. Here is what we want you to take away from this. Before you buy any used Ute, get an independent pre-purchase inspection from a qualified mechanic who has no connection to the seller. Not the mechanic the seller recommends, not a quick look from a mate. An actual independent inspection from someone who will put it on a hoist and spend time underneath it. It costs somewhere between $150 and $300 depending on who you use and where you are in Australia. And it is genuinely one of the best investments you can make. If a seller refuses to allow a pre-purchase inspection, walk away. That refusal tells you everything you need to know. Also, always check the vehicle's history through a service like PPSR, the Personal Property Securities Register. This will tell you if there's money owing on the vehicle, if it has been written off previously, or if it has been reported stolen. It costs around $2 and takes about 30 seconds. $2 versus potentially inheriting someone else's finance debt or buying a written-off vehicle. It is not even a question. When you are physically at the inspection, look at the undercarriage yourself. Bring a torch, get low, look for inconsistent coloring, areas that look freshly painted or treated when the rest of the undercarriage looks aged. Look for bubbling, flaking, or soft spots. If something looks too clean under a work ute, that is not always a good sign. Genuine clean vehicles have a consistency to them. Covered up vehicles have patches, and those patches are what you need to find. Check all your fluid reservoirs carefully. Coolant that is discolored, oily, or has a sweet smell can indicate a serious internal engine problem. Power steering fluid that is dark and burnt smells tells you about neglected servicing. Transmission fluid that is dark and smells burnt is a significant red flag on an automatic. These checks take minutes and they reveal a huge amount. Test every electrical feature: air conditioning, all windows, all door locks, the reversing camera if it has one, trailer brake controller if fitted, all the dashboard warning lights. Turn the ignition on before starting the engine and make sure all the warning lights come on briefly and then go off. A seller who has removed a globe from a warning light bulb to hide a persistent fault is unfortunately not unheard of. And always take it for a proper drive. Not just around the block, on the highway, under load, with hard braking, with tight turning. Feel for vibration. Listen for knocks or rattles. Notice if it pulls to one side under braking. A ute will tell you a lot about its history if you give it the chance to speak. We know this has been a lot of information, and we genuinely hope it helps you go into your next used ute purchase with your eyes wide open. The 3 utes with that hidden chassis rust problem, had those buyers purchased without an inspection, they would have had no idea until the problem became either dangerous or impossibly expensive to fix. That is the reality of the market right now, and it is the reason channels like the Drive Intel exist. If this video gave you something useful, a tip, a warning, a checklist item you had not thought of before, please do us a favor and drop a comment below. Tell us what kind of ute you're looking at, or share a story if you have ever been caught out by a hidden problem on a used vehicle. We rate every comment, and we genuinely love hearing from the community. And if you know someone who is currently shopping for a used ute, a family member, a mate, a colleague, please share this video with them. It takes 2 seconds, and it could save them thousands of dollars. That kind of share means more to us than any algorithm boost because it means real people are getting real information when they need it most. This has been the Drive Intel. Stay smart, stay curious, and we will see you in the next one.